All right. All right. Well, thank you for sitting. Can y'all hear me okay? When I switch to the headphones, we're good? Okay. Thank you for sitting. I just turned the recorder on. I forgot to turn it on at the beginning. So for those of you who are listening at home, you missed 20 minutes of silence. I trust you can create that probably all by yourself. But we just spent about 20 minutes sitting together. Before we shift into anything else, just take a moment all by yourself just to kind of check in and see what you notice about how you're feeling right now compared to half hour ago. Just anything you notice that's different in your body. Anything you notice that's a little different in your emotional landscape. Anything you might notice about the content of your thoughts or the speed with which they arise, the urgency with which they arise, just in case there's a difference. Sometimes there is, sometimes there's not. But I do think it's helpful just to notice. Oh, I wonder if anything is different. I wonder if anything is different. I am giving a talk tomorrow morning at the Minnesota Zen Meditation Center. Some of you know that place, some of you don't. But what I plan on doing, time allowing, is as soon as the talk starts, the sitting is over. There's a sitting, and then the talk. And what I plan on doing is asking all the folks in the room there tomorrow, the Zoom room, as well as the physical room that we're in. What I plan on asking them is, how did your sitting go? Because what I want to do is bring into their awareness that there's part of us that evaluates, like all the time, our experience, right? So I get done with my dinner and there's part of me that evaluates. So I get done with that conversation with my cousin, part of me evaluates. I get done with my day at the amusement park, some part of me evaluates. And that's the same with our sitting. So it's kind of a trick question. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this, time allowing. I'll do this tomorrow. I ask a trick question to a large group of people who just got through meditating. How did you do? Because that's an evaluating question, right? And then however that answer shows up in their heads, oh, that was a pretty good sitting. It wasn't such a great sitting. To ask them to be very curious about what made it a good sitting or what made it not a good sitting. And there's no wrong answer here. I'm not tricking them into failing. But I do think it's interesting, and I do think it's important to kind of keep track, be aware, at least have some consciousness around the way that I evaluate meditation experience. If I think a good or a bad sitting, it's kind of cool for me to know why. I mean, honestly, like, why? Does my body feel better? Did my breathing slow? Do I have more thoughts, less thoughts? Why do I think one of those things is good? Why do I think one of them is bad? Do I feel more tenderly? Do I have some awareness? I don't know. I mean, I'm just throwing out ideas. But just even seeing kind of the footprint of our evaluation shows us the part of us that's judging and wanting one outcome over another. And so unconsciously, until we see it, right? Unconsciously, that's steering our whole practice. Can steer our practice for years, right? If we have an idea that there's a metric for failure or a metric for success or some way in which it can be good or bad, then unconsciously we're steering, right? The whole time. It makes perfect sense, right? So, oh yeah, I always do my sittings in the morning because my mind is quieter then. Okay, cool. But you've just told us that you think that quieter mind is a metric for success. Therefore, busier mind would be a metric for failure. So you don't want to sit in the evening when your mind is busier. Again, that's not bad. It seems important to sort of see that we all kind of carry usually an unconscious set of ideas and beliefs about what makes an awareness practice good or bad, successful or failure. And if we don't know that, then it's steering us unconsciously. Once we become aware of it, then we get to make right, much more conscious choices about, wait, is that a true thing? Why do I think that? I wonder where I got that idea. Do I want to keep operating from that? Maybe so, or maybe not. So kind of an interesting thing to be curious about. Yeah, and if you listen to my talk tomorrow at Minnesota Zen Center, you can just skip the first 10 minutes because it'll be this. You'll be like, oh, I have a sneak preview. Anyway, I do think it's interesting to be curious about that. So I wanted to make sure to include that on the recording. So welcome everybody again to our first mindfulness practice group of 2024. And we're doing the 6 habits that, what was it called? Let me look at it. 6 common habits that fuel your anxiety. I got this, and I forget now where I got it. I found it online someplace. A link led me to another link, and we did a mindfulness practice group on this, I don't know, 3 months ago, 4 months ago. Does that sound right? Some of you were there. Some of you weren't. Probably half of you were there. And it was kind of therapy speak, which is fine in this setting. These are some things that people have a tendency to do in relation to their anxiety, and people, have a certain amount of vigilance and anxiety kind of all the time. So it's something that we like to be aware of. So it's a fine list, and it was cool to spend some time on it. And when I offered in the last newsletter, hey, let me know what you want to talk about. If you have suggestions for, topics you'd like to explore, questions you'd like the mindfulness practice group to dive into, or to hear teachings on, or whatever, let me know. I'd love to. And I got 3 emails kind of right away, all saying, I want to go back to the 6 habits that fuel anxiety thing, and I want to talk about what we do with those. Like recognizing them and recognizing how they showed up for us is kind of what we did a few months ago. And the questions and the suggestions were about, well, now that we know that they're there, what do we do with them? So does that sound right? Does that sound clear? What I'm saying? Maybe you're one of those people who said, oh, I'd love to circle back and revisit this. So we're going to do that today. And what I'm going to start by doing is putting them up on the screen. And I also will confess to you, I sent you all, let me see if I can do this. Okay, if I do that, are you seeing therapists say these 6 common habits are fueling your anxiety? Is that what you're seeing? Oh, good, thank you. I also just sent you an email. I sent you an email during the sitting that has this as an attachment. And you can refer to that now if it is easier for you, depending on your device. You also can completely ignore it until later. I just decided to do that now on the off chance, whatever it is you're using, it would be more helpful for you to have it in essentially larger print in front of you. So all of you now have this. And the 6 habits that we played with are black and white thinking, avoidance, seeking reassurance, catastrophizing, negative self-talk, and people pleasing. Do those sound familiar to some of you? They probably sound familiar on some level to all of us because they're really, really, really common behaviors. So that was the list that we played with, and everything that we're talking about here, everything we're looking at is, this is what shows up in our conditioned human consciousness as a reaction to or a defense against the emotion of fear or anxiety. Some folks will parse those apart and say fear is different than anxiety, but they're under the same tree. Some folks don't bother to separate them because they're under the same tree, but that's the general feeling state we're playing with here, is aversion or fear. And so we call it, anxiety, we call it nervousness, apprehension, pensiveness, self-consciousness, blah, 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 right? That's what we're talking about. And so very, very briefly, just to touch on all of them, and then we're going to take it to another place today. Black and white thinking, all of us, I think most of us know that phrase. Maybe I can make that a little bigger, Black and white thinking, all or nothing thinking, dualistic thinking is something that we tend to do when we get really anxious because our frontal cortex, our more advanced thinking systems kind of go a little bit offline or all the way offline, and we move into the back brain, and we're attempting essentially to simplify. We're attempting to simplify our experience by saying, I either fight or I flee. I stay or I go. They're good or they're bad. They're a boy, they're a girl, right? Boom, 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 boom. So it's an attempt to simplify, which kind of makes sense intuitively, doesn't it? In response to feeling really, really scared, to want to simplify my perception of the circumstance that I'm in, to just make it easier to digest, to make it easier to be in, to make my decision-making process more straightforward, or even to simplify the emotional map, the good person, the bad person, the person I'm safe with, the person I'm not safe with, that kind of stuff, right? So pretty simple. It's a pretty simple mechanism, and we all do it to some degree. And because fear is the primary kind of creator of ego functioning, we're actually in this all the time to a greater or lesser degree. We all tend to think in terms of in, out, good, bad, right, wrong, right? We call it dualistic thinking, but it's just human thinking, right? And when we get scared, it just dials that up, black and white thinking. Avoidance is the second one, makes a world of sense. This is usually a behavior like, oh, I really don't want to call her. I'm really scared of how that's going to go. And so I just put it off and I don't do it, right? Oh, I'm really scared of going to that social gathering because every time I go there, I feel shame and they're really, really mean and I don't feel like I belong. And so I just avoid it. This, it's a flight defense, and it makes a tremendous amount of sense in response to fear, right? I'm scared of the thing, therefore I don't go to the thing. I avoid the thing. You're like, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Seeking reassurance also makes sense. That's more of an emotional need we're looking to have met. But if you're really scared about whatever the thing is, you call your bestie and say, I'm really scared about this. I'm going to be terrible at my presentation I have to give. And your friend says, no, you're a great speaker. You're really smart. That group loves you. You're going to do great. And you kind of feel better, right? You're getting reassurance. Oh, I get it. I'm looking for emotional comfort, to try to de-escalate how my fear is showing up. You're kind of getting the pattern here, right? Like this is just how we deal with fear. Like, oh, it changes our thinking and we try to avoid stuff and we try to calm ourselves and feel better. Catastrophizing is a great word, isn't it? It's just a fun word to say because it's a long, complicated word. Catastrophizing. We make a catastrophe out of everything. This is dramatizing. Again, it's the way our thinking tends to go. I'm really scared of going. I'm thinking of everything in terms of Christmas and the holidays, right? Because we just got through going through that season here. I'm so scared that if I go to that party and I bring that hot dish, they're not going to like that hot dish and I'm going to get criticized. And so you take the thing that you're scared of and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And it turns out, it isn't just, I added too much salt to the hot dish. It ends up being, they're all going to point and laugh. They're going to kick me out. I'm never going to be welcome to return. I'm going to die alone and afraid under a bridge, knowing no one will ever love me. That kind of thing. The suffering that I'm describing is not funny, but the mechanism of catastrophizing actually is kind of funny, right? This is sort of the Chicken Little thing of like, I got hit on the head with something and so therefore the sky is falling. Kids do this a lot, right? And so do scared adults. You just sort of watch this. So if you're not aware of the fact that you catastrophize, just look at your news feed. Spend about 10-15 minutes with your news feed, then turn your news feed off and notice where your thoughts go, right? The story about climate change, the story about the election, story about the local school board, the book they want to ban, or whatever the thing is, it just tends to create a huge amount of fear in us, right? A huge amount of anxiety and trepidation about the future. And then our thoughts start going, oh my God, I should start, hoarding toilet paper and drinking water, because that's just kind of how thinking works, right? The last two are, of course, negative self-talk, which is when our ego narrative, our internalized parent sort of joins the party and decides that it's our fault and that we're to blame, and it just kind of piles on, right? It takes the fact that we're feeling scared and vulnerable and then victimizes the part of us that's scared and vulnerable, right? It's just self-criticism. It's again a primary function of the ego. All of us do this all the time. It's just a question of degree, right? And when we get scared, for some of us, it tends to dial that up. And then the last one is people pleasing. That's one of the great running jokes about a lot of us who are born and raised here in the Midwest is, you know, we have the nice, we're very, very nice. We're very, very people pleasing. We're very, very polite. We're very, you know, that's kind of one of our things. And so taking care of the people around me, making sure that they're all really happy and well cared for. Oh, you like me? Okay, I'm going to make you happy. Great. You can feel how that's a way of keeping me safe if I'm feeling scared. If I'm feeling really insecure in a room of 5 people, if I take care of all 5 of those people and make sure that they like me, that I'm taking care of them. Can I get you more tea? Is there anything else I can get for you? You know, that oftentimes that's about, as long as those 5 people hold me in kind regard, I'm safe. Right? If they're angry or disapproving or disappointed in me, I'm in danger. Right? So if I'm feeling scared, it makes sense. I'd be like, how do I take care of the people around me? Right? To help ensure that I'm more likely to be treated in a way that makes me feel safe. Right? So those are the 6. And this is, roughly speaking, a big part of the conversation we had. I'll get rid of this. Zip. A couple months ago. And I know I just went really fast, but does all that kind of make sense? There's kind of a common sense dimension to most of it. Any questions about any of that stuff before we shift gears? Did anybody immediately? What we did last time is we said, hey, here's 6 really common ones. We all do all of them to some degree. But what we did is, hey, choose your favorite. Choose your favorite. Choose the one that you're like, oh, that's the one. That's my favorite. That's the one I do. And then we had people write down, oh, this is the one that I do. These are the circumstances that I do it in. We went internal and kind of went, what's underneath that behavior? What's underneath that thinking process that I find myself caught in? Like, what's happening in me? What is that? Right? Like, what is the mechanism? I'm just curious about how it came to be. And for some of us, we were able to actually trace some of the patterns that we do as adults back many, many, many years to when those patterns would have been created and go, oh, you know what? In my family system, people pleasing was my best defense because I had a really large family and there was a lot of frustration and there was a lot of anger in those rooms growing up. And so when I figured out people pleasing when I was a little kid, taking care of all those siblings and taking care of mom and dad, making sure that I was the most well-liked one, it kept me safer. And they kind of go, oh, I get what it goes back to. I get the circumstance that helped create it. I understand how it shows up in me now. So that now when I'm sitting at the board meeting and all of a sudden I'm scared because the CEO is angry and I watch myself go, oh, can I get you a glass of water? That I'm reenacting a pattern that served me really, really well, 50 years ago or something like that. And you kind of go, oh, I see the whole thing. I see that I'm anxious. I see the behavior. I see the patterns in my own life that help create that. Wow, I can see the whole thing. I'm mindful, right? To use mindfulness terms, that would be mindfulness of emotion. I know I'm anxious. Mindfulness of behavior or defense or need. Oh, this is what I'm watching myself do. And I'm trying to meet my need for safety and belonging. I see it. Oh my God, I see it. Mindfulness of, well, this is Buddhist. Mindfulness of karma would be the thing that created the thing. Let's go into the history, right? Go into the past. What created this pattern? It didn't just invent itself today in the boardroom. There's a reason that you chose it. There's a reason that you chose it. So you've got mindfulness of karma, or bringing karma into view. Early Buddhist scripture might say, please bring karma into view so that you can understand your own pattern. And when I say understand, folks, I just want to be clear. I mean understand, like I, with my brain, understand the mechanism and how it came to be. Oh, I'm intuitively and instinctively going to try to take care of everybody in the room because I'm scared and that's what I learned to do. I get it. But understand in a mindfulness context also means to tame or befriend. In other words, I see it, but I see it with my heart. Does that kind of make sense? I mean, yeah, I'm using my brain. I understand the mechanism, but it's not a clinical observation or understanding. It's not like detached or cold. It's the part of us that goes, oh my God, I'm watching myself offer the CEO a glass of water because there's a scared 5-year-old in me that's remembering how scared I felt when I was a little tiny boy in a room that was really, really dangerous to me. I get it. Right? So mindfulness by definition, it's non-judgmental. Of course it's non-judgmental at minimum. But the truth is the real heart of mindfulness practice is kind. Of course it's non-judgmental awareness, but it's more than that. It's embracing awareness. It's kind awareness. It's intimate awareness. It's engaged awareness, not caught, not identified, not agenda, not that. Right? But you guys get the spirit of what I'm saying, right? It's, oh, of course that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. Do you feel it? It isn't the kind of awareness that goes, oh, I've just identified the cause of the pathology. It's, oh, I see where this comes from. No wonder he does this when he gets scared. Can you feel it? I mean, I just watched myself touch my face when I said that. Just out of, oh, of course. Of course. And now that he sees that, the grown-up Busho, he can make a decision. I don't have to offer the CEO a glass of water. Or maybe I can. It doesn't matter either way. The point is now I'm suddenly aware, oh, I get the pattern. I get why it's created. And I understand this thing that I do. In other words, I come by this honestly. It's one of my favorite phrases. I say that one a lot. I come by it honestly. This worked really, really well for me. Maybe it still does. Maybe it doesn't, and I've got to let it go. But at least understanding, oh, this came to be for very honest reasons, born of very real suffering. Ah, now I'm not blaming Busho for doing that, right? I don't have a weapon in my hand anymore. I'm just going, I get it. This is why you do catastrophizing or people pleasing or black and white thinking. I get it. I get it. I get it. Here's your humanity, right? Yeah. So I want to give it back to you just for another minute. Does anybody have anything around any of that? Just, I don't know, questions, or for those of you who were here a few months ago, the first time we talked about this, any insights you've had since or anything? I just want to make sure we're all on the same page here before we go any further.
I've got a question, Michelle.
Please, Julie.
So there's a lot of chatter about psychological safety, the difference between safe environments and unsafe environments. And I was just playing with, I'm just curious if the patterns, they're still there in the safe environment, right? But in the unsafe environment, maybe they're being stoked, like the fire's being stoked. Is that a way to think about it?
For sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. Did everybody hear and understand that? Yeah, that's a great question. And so thank you. Thank you for that. Because that's the karmic piece. That's the what's the other word for karma? Karma is the sort of Buddhist term, cause and effect. The history, it's the thing that created the thing, the historical piece. Like there's a reason that when Busho gets scared, he immediately goes, who am I with? How can I make him happy? We'll just use that as our example. When Busho gets really scared, he immediately goes, who am I with? How can I make him happy? And we're going to call that people pleasing, right? So what we're thinking is, okay, we notice that he does that behavior. Sometimes that behavior is helpful, sometimes it's not, sometimes it's caretaking and enmeshed and irritating and right, but he keeps doing it. Part of why we're looking at what we're looking at is to go, why does he do that? And so what we're going to find is the antecedent. There's a reason the pattern exists. So what we're starting with, when I say it's more than non-judgmental, the karmic point of view around from mindfulness of behavior pattern, I'll call it that, is we trust anything that's a pattern is a pattern for a reason. We trust anything that's a habit is a habit for a reason. So the basis of this, which makes perfect sense, is we trust that Homo sapiens, right? That's us. Homo sapiens won't repeat something that didn't work or that hurt them, right? Unless they have to, they won't repeat the thing that doesn't work. They'll repeat the thing that does work. So if you've been doing blankety blankety blank for a long time, there's a reason that you've been doing blankety blankety blank for a long time. Those of us who have worked in addiction know even if the thing, the habit, the pattern, the repeated behavior no longer works, it sucks on toast, it's horrible, we can at least trust at one point it did. At one point, it was at least the best of the available options. So you did it, and it again worked or was the best of all available options. So you repeated it. It worked and was again the best of all available options. So you did it again. So you did it again. You get it, right? So what we can trust in this example about Busho is if his first instinct, his just unconscious, immediate go-to is make everybody in the room happy, we can go, at one point in his life, that worked really well. It was the best shot he had. So what you're asking, and I think it's wonderful to see, is that pattern exists in me all the time. All the time, all the time. Of course it does. It's part of my karma. It's in my cells. This is just part of my formation, right? So I'm carrying that with me all the time. And if I don't like that thing, oh, they activate my people pleasing because they're so toxic. Oh, my wife's side of the family, they're so toxic, and they get together and talk about politics and sports, and they're the worst. And so going to her house on Christmas is horrible because they're toxic and they trigger me. I mean, that language is the kind of language we hear, and we get it, right? This is Busho trying to describe, I'm going to go in my defenses. I'm going to feel so scared. I'm going to try to take care of that room, and it's not going to work. Arrgh. And so my conclusion, again, understandably, is that room isn't safe. Those people aren't safe. So I want to go around people who are safe, i.e., who don't trigger me. So there's some truth to all of that. Of course, different people are different and blah, 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 blah. Yes, there are toxic environments and less toxic environments. But the reason I love your question is, and it's very apropos to our conversation today, you can imagine unconsciously that still continues my pattern because I'm going to forever be externally focused and trying to move from safe room to safe room to safe room to safe room. My safety is not my own. My contentment and my peace are not my own. They are dependent on all of you good people, because as soon as you trigger me, now you're not safe, and now I've got to go find another room. Doggone it, I really liked him too. Off I go. And then I go find a new group of friends. And I feel safe until they trigger me. And then I go, oh, they're not safe either. And then can you kind of feel it? So on one level, yeah, there's safe people and unsafe people. That's true up to a point. We don't want to discount the fact there are extremes on this that we all understand and need to be honored. But ultimately, the place we're playing today as mindfulness practitioners is internally. I want to look at all the places in me that have been hurt, that create these patterns of avoidance and defense so that I can be in relationship to them myself. I can see them. I can understand them. I can validate how they came to be. I can be the one who shows up for the uncomfortable states. The part that seeks reassurance, that can be me now, seeking that from me. Did you notice I started our meditation today with meditation is a gift, and you are the gift, and you are the one who receives the gift. It's giving yourself to yourself. Do you feel how completely internally referenced that is? That's what this whole thing ends up being is, oh, I'm really anxious. If I'm taking care of that anxiety, I recognize that I'm feeling that anxiety. I know what that anxiety came from. I'm remembering the pattern. It all makes sense to me. Now there's no enemies in the room. This is just me being really scared. Now I know what's going on, and I get to make a decision. Do I want to offer that person something or do I not? Right? But I'm not doing it out of unconscious defense. I'm not just trying to change you so that I can have a different state. Do you get it? The primary relationship is here. So what that means is I can be the person who can still create safety for myself in a room of unsafe people. And I don't have to always go from room to room to room to room to room, hoping that everybody does everything magically right, and I'm not. and I'm not ever triggered. Or I'm not, I like your term, Julie, stoked, where somebody's kind of like, because the embers are down there all the time, all the time, all the time, and certain settings just really stoke those. Am I speaking to your question? Okay. Am I riffing for like 10 minutes, just going on and on and on in response to your question? Okay, good, 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 good. Okay, good. Yes, that's what we do here. Jeez, I just put a nickel in the slot machine, not a dollar. Oh my Lord. Okay. So what I want to do with this today is bum. I want to explore for just a second the spirit in which that list was created. Because the name of the list, and remember, I found this online. What's the word? I have no skin in this game. I have no axe to grind. I'm not looking to be critical at all. What I can notice in myself when I saw that is here are 6 habits that fuel our anxiety. The spirit in which that list was given, correct observations about how the mind works, and here are 6 things that all of us do, yes. And we can feel as we read it. Again, I sent it to you, so you've got a copy there. What you can feel in the spirit of how that whole thing was written, even was if you change these habits, you're not going to stoke your anxiety anymore, which is a good thing. And underneath all of it is still this idea. Can you feel the idea? How do we get rid of this thing? Did that strike anybody when we first looked at this a few months ago? I'm seeing some people nodding. I'm just calling attention to the kind of the obvious, and it's so big that we sometimes don't see it because it's hard to find the edges. But what I'm describing is we intuitively, and I'm talking about human beings' ego selves, we intuitively create an adversarial relationship with negative experience. We just intuitively do. We just automatically do. That's not a bad thing. That's what ego consciousness does. Again, we're not identifying a pathology. I just want all of us to see it. Maybe if I master these 6 things and I figure out an antidote to those 6 things, I will not experience anxiety anymore. Right? It makes a lot of sense. I want to be really clear here. It makes a lot of sense that if I recognize, oh, I'm falling into black and white thinking and I'm making it worse, that awareness can help me stop doing that. Of course, 100%, of course. That's why I like this list. Those are 6 really common things. They all make sense to me. I get it. I get it. I don't want to make it worse. Don't make it worse. Right? First, do no harm. The Hippocratic Oath, right? That, yes, of course, of course, of course, of course. But what I want to call attention to is, again, intuitively, we're going to say, hey, that's anger. How do I get rid of it? Hey, that's sadness. How do I get rid of it? Hey, that's anxiety. How do I get rid of it? It means something about me. If I have it, I am bad. It means something about the other people in my life. If they have it, they are bad. This is something that needs to be controlled, organized, eliminated. Do you feel it? There's just an energy underneath our relationship with afflictive states. And it makes sense. We understand why. But this is mindfulness. We're in a different setting here today. Our ego will automatically do that. Oh, I don't like you. You're in an afflictive state. So how do I get rid of you, separate myself from you, defeat you, fight, flight? That's how ego functioning works. We get it. But in this setting, mindfulness. Oh, I see it. We're holding it in a much bigger container. Oh, I see that it showed up. Oh, I see that what I did actually fueled it. Yeah, it stoked it. It made it bigger. I understand how that happens. I get it. I now, with awareness, can make decisions. No, I don't want to stoke it. But can you feel the softness of the heart there? That isn't a heart that's trying to eliminate or amputate or end an experience. It's a heart that's trying to understand and touch and be intimate with all of the aspects of that experience. The goal of mindfulness practice isn't to eliminate negative experiences ever. It just doesn't happen. Soft hearts don't want to do that anyway. They just don't want to do that, right? You don't hold your crying kid to get it to shut up. You hold your crying kid because the kid is really scared or upset or angry, and you want to be closer to them. Make sure that they remember that they're still lovable and they're still included, and they need comfort. And so you hold them close. I know a lot of you've all heard me use that metaphor before. But do you see how that very same behavior, I'm going to hold you close, can have either of those two different things going on? That's what mindfulness is. It's holding something close. I'm just going to see you. Come on in. Let me know more. I want to be closer to you. I want to understand you more. Tell me your story about your anger or your sadness or your fear or your anxiety. I want to know more. Please come. Can you feel it? That's what it is. That's what mindfulness is. I'm not judging. I'm not opinionating. I'm not breaking myself apart from. I'm not analyzing. I'm not catastrophizing. I'm not doing any of this. I'm just holding you close. But can you feel how I can do that behavior from a place of I just want to be near you because I can see that you're suffering and I want to be close to you? Or I can also do that very same behavior from the place of if I hold you, you're more likely to shut up quicker. And we're in the middle of Target right now. And I'm really embarrassed by what you're doing. And so come here. Can you feel it? I can rock the baby out of compassion, and I can rock the baby out of great fear of my own experience. So this list, which I still think is a lovely list, it feels to me as if it's written from the latter place. The insights are correct, the words are correct, all the teaching is correct, but it's still coming from the place in us that's like, how the hell do I get rid of anxiety? Maybe there's a trick. Right? Maybe there's a trick, and maybe if I master that trick, I'll never have that anymore. Why is Busho bringing this to Mindfulness Practice Group? He's bringing it to Mindfulness Practice Group because it's one of the most common misunderstandings about meditation, i.e. mindfulness practice, that exists in the world, which is if I start practicing this, and if I get really, really good at practicing this, and if I practice this long enough, I won't have afflictive states anymore. Right? We all believe that, or we all misunderstand that to start with, or else we wouldn't be here. Right? So I thank you, please, thank you, all of you, for having that definitely wrong idea. Myself included. Isn't it nice that we've all practiced long enough to kind of go, oh, there is something much kinder that's possible? I'm not here to amputate any of my experiences. I'm here to get so big, I'm not scared of any of them, and I can call them right in, including fear. I can call them right in. So today, what I encourage us to do, we're going to take a break now because we're about halfway through. I want all of us to have a chance to stand up, stretch your legs, get another cup of tea, all that kind of stuff. We'll take a 15-minute break. And what occurs to me today to do with this, my sense is you probably already have something coming up in you around it, is when you look at that list of 6 things, I'll put them back up on the screen here for you. Ba-dum-bum-bum. And again, if it's easier for you to call up the list that I sent you on your own device in that document, you are welcome to do that. Here we go. I want to make you there. There we go. Zip. And zip. Okay, I'll put this back up on the screen. I'm getting so technologically savvy, folks. There's our 6 that we're in love with. To see again, if you can find the one that you most likely go to, you probably have a couple of favorites. But if one jumps out at you, you did it this week, you did it earlier today, it's the one you saw in yourself over the holidays. I don't know. It's the one that's caused you the most suffering. Something, the one that kind of grabs you today. To see if you can get a little closer, if you can get a little closer to the primary feeling state, and if you can get closer to the core belief around it. I'm using a Western term there, core belief, meaning if I'm needing, we'll use the Busho example again, I'm going to people please because I'm really, really scared. The behavior is people pleasing, right? The core feeling is insecurity, maybe bordering on terror, depending on how big the fear is and how early back in my past this behavior was adopted. If I'm really, really, really young, then I'm really, really, really powerless. And my fear is probably terror, right? I want to get as close to that as I can. And then there's going to be a belief around that. And sometimes it's really easy to find the belief. Sometimes it's harder because the belief was formed so early that we didn't really have words. In the mindfulness model, after mindfulness of emotion comes mindfulness of thought, consciousness, or thinking. And what they're trying to help us see is the relationship between thinking, i.e., beliefs and stories and narratives, and the emotions that give rise to them. If I'm scared and fearful, I think fearful, scared thoughts. And if I'm thinking fearful, scared thoughts, it tends to create more fear, and they play off each other. And what we're asking today is, yeah, the nature of the fearful thoughts, even the nature of the catastrophe kind of narrative that I might create, if I'm paying close enough attention, are going to help me see there's a very large, we would call it core, a very large unconscious belief in there. So for my people pleasing example, when Busho gets really scared, I better take care of the people in this room. The core belief might be, if I can create happiness in them, I will be safe. If I can't create happiness in them, I am in danger. It might be something like that, something along those lines. I am not safe, and it's up to me to create safety, something like that. Right? It might be a lot simpler than that. It might be more sophisticated than that. It might be something that shows up really easily for you, and it might be hard to get to. This is actually a pretty big ask. Seeing the relationship between deep feeling states and core beliefs is a big ask for most folks. Most folks will never know that this is operative in their life, right? So if this doesn't show up right away, don't turn it into a thing. It might be easy to get to for you today, and it might not. But let's spend 15 minutes with that, okay? Let's all just take a break, stretch your legs, get a cup of tea, but write down your favorite. Write down the one that shows up for you, or the two if you wish, and see if you can find the core feeling or feelings, if there's more than one, and then make that big leap. See if something shows up in you around, here's what I believe about myself or about the world that's really big under there, that's juicing this pattern, right? This habit that I now have, that I know helps create more suffering for me. I want to see if I can find where that is. So do you feel what we're doing here? We're going internally. It is not going to be, a core belief is not going to be going to be ultimately about something sophisticated that adults would say, like about politics or geothermal systems or global warming. Core beliefs aren't sophisticated like that. They're not about that. They're going to be usually about us, and usually very simple, primal, need based. So does that sound good? Does that give us something to do for 15? And then we'll circle back and we'll see what we see. All right, folks. Thank you very much. I will turn let's see here. How do I do this? I'm going to turn my camera off, I think, and I'll see you back in 15. Okay.